Spiritual bypassing. Is it really a thing? Good morning, my friends. It's John here in the John of News Studios, which looks a little bit like this. And I am here talking to you this morning about the concept of spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing. I've had two people in the past month or so ask me about spiritual bypassing. It must be a topic that's out there in the psyche right now for a couple people to ask about at the same time. But let's go back, first of all, to the origins of the concept of spiritual bypassing. It's a theory created by transpersonal psychotherapist named John Wellwood in his book from the early 1980s called Toward a Psychology of Awakening. Spiritual bypassing can be defined as a, quote, tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, or unfinished developmental tasks. That is the perfect description from a psychotherapist. Because everything that they're talking about is behind you, right? Now, when I talk about my father and my emotional issues with my father, I'm well past it, well over it. And I did not once go to a psychotherapist. And I know that there are psychotherapists on my channel who will argue against me, and they've already started to, and that's okay. You believe what you believe. I know it worked for me. And it wasn't psychotherapy. It wasn't looking backwards in my world. But what they're talking about here is the concept of using spiritual ideas and practices. Now, I will agree with the concept of spiritual ideas and practices if you are not putting faith in them, if you're not putting belief in them. Because a lot of times people will say, well, this has happened because my karma, or because we had an issue in a past life, or things of that nature. Those are literally just avoiding the situation. For me, I had to actually look at my father, and I had to go, okay, so he had an issue too, and I am leaving that behind, right? I had to release my past. I had to let go of my past to get to where I am now and to raise a beautiful son that I have now, right? Not to continue the cycle of abuse that was in my family. My grandfather was an alcoholic abuser. My father was an alcoholic abuser. And I am not. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. And I have a son who gets told he's loved every day. And it has never been struck once. That was my choice. But I had to let go of my past. Is that spiritual bypassing? Absolutely not. It's literally letting go of the circumstances of my past. Psychotherapists make their living off of diving into people's pasts. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. They believe in their therapy, and I think that's great. However, their whole concept is to get people past their past, to go back and clean up their past. There's nothing behind you that's going to change. There's nothing back there that's going to change in any way, shape, or form. It happened. The question is what are you doing from this point forward? What are you doing from this point forward? And you hear these concepts about bottling it up inside. No, it's not bottling it up inside if you're releasing it. If you're not releasing it and you're just justifying why things happen with spiritual ideas, then I can understand their concept of spiritual bypassing. You're bypassing actually looking at it. For me to say my father was an alcoholic abuser and his father was an alcoholic abuser, I'm obviously looking in the past. I'm obviously looking back at the past. But what did I do in the present with that information? I let it go. I just let it go. I decided that was that part of my life, and this is this part of my life. I couldn't go back there and as a child forgive them, right? But as an adult, I had to say, I am done with that. I have released that attachment to that situation. The Buddha talks about releasing attachment. It really comes down to I am, not I was. Psychotherapy, and I'll say it again, I think it has been one of the most damaging sciences ever created. And I know people are going to be mad about that, but I have seen it. I've seen it on people who every day are the victim of their experience because they're rehashing it in therapy. And I have met many more who have said, I am so much lighter now that I've just let it go. And there's only one moment you can let anything go, and it's in the here and now. But if you're justifying it and saying, my karma said this, or past life we had a soul contract that did this, absolutely, that could be considered spiritual bypassing, even though, it's a psychotherapy term, and really it's a psychotherapy theory, because there's not really any evidence that says that that's true. That's his theory in this 1980s book. When it comes down to your moving forward in your life and you're creating an empowered life, there's only one moment you can do any of that, and that's in the here and now. And when you look at spiritual bypassing, that's not being in the here and now. That's justifying why the here and now isn't great. That is the belief that the here and now is not great. There comes a moment where you have to let it go. For me, it was to say, that was that part of my life. He was abused too, and I'm not doing that. I am, God's name, not doing that. I think that's just the fastest and easiest way to get past all of your things that you're declaring that you're a victim of. I had a psychotherapist and another person who likes psychotherapy try to argue against me in my comments because I said I think it's one of the most damaging sciences out there. That's their belief. They can argue it, and they're welcome to their belief. They're not going to convince me because I've seen it. I've done thousands of private sessions. I've done over 700 in the past year, right? And I have seen the damage of rehashing the past or choosing in the present moment to be a victim of your past. I've seen that almost every day. But let me say, if those people put their faith that psychotherapy is actually working, then they can be healed. But until they come to the moment of going, I am joyfully living forward, until they come to that space, they're going to stay in psychotherapy. They're going to stay in that science that makes them feel like they're working on something or doing something. And in reality, how long do you want to work on it? How long do you want to rehash things? Do you want to spend your life rehashing, or do you want to spend your life living joyfully? And it really comes down to you saying, I'm born again. I started over. I'm going to become as a child and enter the kingdom of heaven. I'm going to set down all those past experiences and beliefs and be empowered. Because that's what this is really about. Spiritual bypassing is justifying why you're a victim. What I'm talking about is choosing not to be a victim. What I'm talking about is choosing to be empowered. And you don't need psychotherapy for that. You need to grab your power. Ye are gods. Ye are gods. Nothing is impossible for you. It says it right in the Bible. You can ask a mountain to move, and it'll move. Nothing is impossible for you. If that's the truth, then nothing in your past can stop you except for you. And it comes down to you saying, I am done with that part of my life. Because it was that part of my life. It was just a chapter in a very long book. And the rest of this book is an empowered adventure story. It's fun and lively and joyful and loving. I am releasing the things that aren't that. One of the greatest quotes that I have ever heard in my life came from my very good friend Dan Thurman. He's a very successful motivational speaker. And I mean a very successful motivational speaker. And I said to Dan one day, Dan, when did you become successful? He said, when I stopped doing everything else. When I stopped doing everything else. When I stopped being a victim of my past experience. When I stopped being someone who needs therapy. When I stopped being someone who was disempowered by an experience of my past. When I chose to step into the idea that I am empowered, that I'm successful, that I'm creating. That's the key to getting past anything in your life, is to step into the idea that you are empowered. And that experience in your past is just exactly that. And it's an experience in your past. But if you're constantly going back and rehashing it, if you're constantly going back and you're not moving forward, you're anchored to it. And you, in your present moment, can cut that rope to that anchor and sail away. Spiritual bypassing, if you're avoiding it and you're using a spiritual excuse as to why you're avoiding it, that would be a great example of spiritual bypassing. If you're stepping into your power and you're saying, I am, that's not spiritual bypassing. That's empowerment. That's breaking free, sailing forward into something far more beautiful. And like I said, if you feel therapy's for you and you believe that, then go for it, right? I never needed it. And why did I never need it? Because I chose to set the past behind me. Now, psychotherapists will tell me I bottled it up. I didn't. I let it go. So that's my thought on spiritual bypassing. And I hope this helps someone out there. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.